Hello?
Hello?
25 years ago, Wes Craven revived the teen horror genre, birthed a new iconic killer, and gave us one of the bloodiest and most iconic opening scenes of all time with Scream. He made us second-guess our friends and question whether or not to answer the phone when we're home alone at night. From shady boyfriends to psychotic meta movie fans and laughably bad haircuts, Ghostface is back for the 5th time, and we're here to ask...
What's your favorite scary movie?
Not quite. What's the best and what's the worst of Scream? Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Best and the Worst. I'm Andrew Ghai. Joining me, as always, is Ben Bateman. We had a very, very great week of getting to see an awesome movie early. It's the brand new Scream.
This movie is like a pleasant surprise, I have to say, and I'm very happy that we get to talk about this and be so excited to talk about this movie.
Yeah.
Because I don't think this conversation we're about to have about the sort of requel or whatever it is one that is usually this excitable for people. I feel like it's usually kind of the other direction.
Well, and also, like, for as much as I love and study movies, like, requel is pretty a new word in my vocabulary. Like, I don't even know if I would have really been able to describe it before watching Scream. I mean, I can now, but after they really broke it down in the newest Scream, I thought they did a good job of it. And I think it is interesting because it feels like with the way that movies are being made nowadays, there's so many of these that are going to be coming up, kind of riding the coattails of nostalgia, but trying to give it like a new twist, a new flair. I think that's exactly what this movie did, but they did it pretty dang perfectly.
Yeah, and of course, because it is a Scream movie, it's hyper self-aware, it's super meta in its discussion of a film like this, so definitely a lot of fun stuff to talk about. This, as you mentioned, is The Best and the Worst. It's a show where we take a concept, a franchise, an actor, or a director, and we use scientific studies and conversation to establish the best and the worst in the franchise or their canon or whatever. And today, the topic is Scream. And obviously, it's very exciting because we have a new one that we're excited to talk about. So we got to see it a little bit early. And this movie is not directed by Wes Craven for obvious reasons.
No, it's not. I think, honestly, Wes Craven would be really, really happy with how these two new directors kind of carried the torch for him. So before we get into this full breakdown of Scream 5, Scream 2022, or just Scream, I guess, there's a lot of great ways you guys can support this podcast. Of course, this is The Best and the Worst. Last week, we did The Best and the Worst of Paul Thomas Anderson, so go and check that out. You can support this episode and that episode by doing what?
Yeah, you guys can support the show if you follow us on Spotify or if you hit that subscribe button on Apple Podcasts. Honestly, the more of those that we get, the more you guys are going to get these episodes delivered straight into your veins. That is the best way to do it. Or if you leave us a rating or a review. 5 stars, a couple thoughts if you like this podcast. If you're just finding it, if this is the first time, please, it really does help grow the show, and we put our heart and soul into this one. We did a show for a long, long time called Action Movie Anatomy, 250 episodes, actually. This is kind of like the spiritual successor to it, and we're really putting everything we have into finding a way to make this show everything that show was and more, and we're very excited to be doing it, so we would love it if you guys would show us that support.
Yeah, and you can check out Action Movie Anatomy over on YouTube. You can also check us out on YouTube, Action Industries, and our Patreon, patreon.com/Team Action. Okay, that's enough about us. Let's get back into Scream, directed by Matt Olpin and Tyler Gillett, two guys that are pretty much only known for doing, I guess, VHS kind of, but mainly Ready or Not. Ready or Not came out just a couple years ago and was also really good, like a really fun twist on horror that was also kind of funny at certain moments, like in a dark comedy kind of way.
I think Ready or Not really does occupy that space kind of perfectly. I think it's trying to do that thing that you want a horror movie that's a little campy to do, and I think that really does make them the perfect choice. Even the fact that it's like, do you want to play a game, sort of? I mean, that's like kind of what this movie's about in some ways. And so I do think that they are the perfect choices and they embody everything that you want from a Scream movie. I do think it's kind of funny and kind of interesting that Scream, because of it being what it is, it's this super self-aware movie that came out and it redefined what a genre was. To ever go back and be able to remake a Scream movie, you can't just do what the Scream movie did. You have to find a way to do something new in the same vein. That's the only way you can do it.
And I think 2 and 3 were really struggling with that. They were trying to carry the weight of making Scream as interesting and horrifying and self-referential and funny. And it's a really, really difficult thing to pull off. So why did Scream 5 work so well? Well, I think for me, like, the first thing that really caught my attention with Scream 5 was it was brutal. in the best possible way. Like when you're talking about great horror movies, especially slashers, like you need to keep it fresh. You need to keep it spicy. And like just him showing up places or them showing up places and stabbing you is fine enough. But like, I got tired of that. I got tired of the phone call and then running around in a place that you're not super aware of your surroundings, even if it's your own house for some reason. And then you get stabbed by Ghostface popping up behind a door or from a car or from whatever. The very first attack, well, I was going to say kill, but it's actually an attack in Scream 2022 is awesomely brutal. Like, not only do you get a couple good stabs in there, you get some good hand-to-hand, just like him destroying her, and then the stomp on the leg to break the ankle. That was like exactly what I always wanted, because Ghostface, even though he always was successful, or most of the time successful in his kills, he's kind of a bumbling moron when he's trying to kill them until the knife actually kills them. So like, I loved the change up here.
The knife through the hand. Just I anytime I've ever seen this in a movie, it's one of those like, I can't even imagine through my hand. Ugh. It sounds so painful, and honestly, like it would just wreck your hand. Like I don't know, like it just everything. So yeah, the opening scene, because the thing is that the opening scene to Scream 4 is trying to do something kind of similar. It's trying to do a similarly brutal thing, but in this hyper meta way, with obviously the stab movies and being what they are. This movie takes, I think, what that's supposed to feel like when you don't realize you're watching a stab movie, and it's like, nope, we're doing that scene. We're going to give you a very, very, very brutal opening. And again, you're following the template. You're trying to recreate something that feels a lot more like that first movie. And it does. It's equally brutal in a lot of ways. And I mean, in some ways, way more brutal.
And like, I think one of the hardest things about this movie was like using those old tropes of like the phone ringing at the house. And like, how do you even get someone nowadays to answer that phone? Like, literally the first thing that happens is an unknown caller and she ignores it, just like all of us do. So they were, again, aware of what's going on now, but they still made it work with kind of, because it just doesn't feel quite the same if she's just like only on her cell phone.
Yeah,
especially
right.
For that opening kill.
Completely. And I mean, like, they obviously have to find a way to weave it in, because, like, I'll be honest, I don't have a landline. Do you have a landline?
No, I don't have a landline.
And I have no intention to ever get one. In fact, most people I know do not have a landline. And this is a movie that's the Scream movies are about high school kids. Like, this is a movie that's targeted towards a younger demographic who some of those families probably don't have a landline, period. You know?
Yeah. So what else worked for you in the newest Scream? What were some of your other favorite things about the way that they pulled this off?
Yeah, I think that the stuff that worked for me was that the new cast is what carries this movie. Yeah. And I think that I noticed it about halfway through. It was the moment when they say we're going to call an expert and you get to go meet David Arquette. I was like, oh, interesting. This movie already works. Mm-hmm. I'm excited. I'm excited to see these old characters that I've now gotten to love, but I already loved this movie. I was already like totally on board, and so I was like, oh, this is exciting that this is working, because I don't think that a Scream movie has been able to do that for me since the first Scream. None of them have actually been able to live on their own in that way, and I think I kind of liked all of the cast in this movie.
Yeah.
I think they all did a great job, and again, they mirror some of those ideas that we've seen over the years.
Yeah, I have to admit that the lead girl, what's her name again?
Melissa Barrera?
Yeah, she was like fine for me.
Yeah.
I really loved her younger sister. I loved her from You as well. I thought she did a really good job on You, so I was excited to see her in this. I think it's Jessica Ortega.
Yeah, Jenna, like, or maybe Jenna. Something like that.
She does a really good job. I thought that she did great in the opening scene. She's the one that gets attacked. By the way, we are going to be spoiling this movie if you guys haven't figured that out by now.
Everybody dies.
I was okay that like Arquette and Cox came back. Well, obviously, I wanted Neve Campbell to come back.
Yeah.
I liked that Officer Judy came back, but I think they were all used just enough, because I completely agree. The younger generation, this next kind of changing of the guard for the Scream movie really worked for me, because especially I want this franchise to kind of continue on now. I enjoyed this so much that I'd be down for this new group of people to kind of carry that torch on to the next couple Scream movies. I think like once every 10 years would be really cool, but I don't think that actually works in the movie making space. I think it's too far, so it'd have to be once every few years. And I think the other thing that really worked great about this was the self-referential humor and like the being meta like Scream needs to be, but doing it in like a clever way with talking about like toxic fandoms and all that.
Oh my God.
That was probably the most brilliant handling of the Scream meta that we've ever seen.
Well, because so much of the stuff was so funny with that. Like, I love when they show Ghostface in the Stab movies, and he's got the flamethrower and like the sleeveless, and you're like, what? And then they even make such direct reference to The Last Jedi. He's like, when they made Stab 8 and they wanted to make a social commentary, and like, and they made so many direct references to The Last Jedi. It was amazing. And the fact that the boyfriend is this like he's just this douchebag, toxic fandom, don't fuck with my childhood, white kid, is everything that you want this. And, like, that's the stuff in this movie. I was, like, cackling. I thought it was good.
You and I went and saw it at a press screening.
Yeah.
So the whole theater was just dying because that's what we deal with.
Yeah.
That's what you deal with. When you talk about movies, when you live in that space all the time, like, you are going to run into a very, very toxic group of people with any property that you come across. And like the idea that they were able to perfectly encapsulate that into one person, it was awesome.
I mean, my non-spoiler review on this channel went up right when we finished watching it, and one of the comments I made is that, and like this is just how I feel, I'm not the biggest fan of Gale and Dewey. They're just like in general.
Oh yeah, you got ripped apart.
And we'll talk about this a bit more, but like especially there's a scene in this movie that is just one of the like, what is this? And I just was honest about it. I mean, it's not what the franchise is to me. But people are like, you're wrong. You had my ear until you said that. They're the franchise to me. I love Gale and Dewey. It's why I watch these movies. And you're reminded of that same thing, which is like, look, people have a real attachment to the things they love. And they like them whether they're objectively good or bad or done well. Like, it's just how it is.
Yeah, you leaned over to me during the movie and you're like, you're like, I know what it is. You're like, Gale and Dewey are the worst part of this franchise. And I kind of just nodded, and then you said it again. Yep. You're like, yeah, no, they're the worst part of this franchise. And I don't agree with you at all.
Yeah.
I don't think that they're great, but I do think that they're like really important to have. I think this movie wouldn't have been as good without them. I think that the other Scream movies would have been worse without them, even though they already aren't great.
What about that one scene in this movie though?
The one, I mean, it felt appropriate more than anything. It wasn't good, though. Like, I don't think either of them are very great actors, unfortunately. Like, even though I've enjoyed them in moments throughout their careers, I think that, like... And also, aren't they divorced now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that was, like, a big part of it. Like, you already got, like, this really weird history. You're definitely a lot older now. I don't think either of you really care anymore that much.
To be fair, I would have been disappointed if they weren't in this movie.
Right.
So even though I don't think that, like... But there's just something... Okay, I rewatched all the Scream movies, and so did you. But I had never seen 3 and 4, and I didn't have a great memory of 2. So, like, rewatching all the movies, I knew 1 very well, but rewatching all of the movies for this, like, you are hit over the head with this, like, comical thing of Gale shows up, and Dewey's like, just here for a story, Gale. And then she's like, Dewey, I care about you, but I also am a bitch. And he's like, you don't care about me at all, but I'll help you. And it's just like, it's like, it feels like a parody.
Well, again, it's like, it comes down to just like, I think kind of lazy writing in 2 and 3.
Yeah.
And then at 4, it was already like tired. So,
Page 41. Deputy Dewey oozed with inexperience.
Don't you think you're overreacting just a little bit?
No. What I think is that you're money-hungry, fame-seeking, and forgive me for saying mediocre writer. Who's got a cold storage shed where her heart should be. No offense intended.
Dewey, I never meant to imply
How do you know that my dim-witted inexperience isn't merely a subtle form of manipulation used to lower people's expectations, thereby enhancing my ability to effectively maneuver within any given situation?
Yeah, I mean, anything else about this movie or specifically that really, really stood out for you, that really worked? I think for me, I was like happy with them being 2 killers again. I think it's like a good homage to what the original Scream idea was. I think that Mikey Madison and then Jack Quaid are the 2 that ended up playing the killers. I thought they both did a really good job.
Yeah.
I thought they were cool. I thought Jack did a good job of being that toxic fandom, and I thought like Mikey Madison did like it was funny because I picked them from the beginning of the movie.
You just felt like it was them.
I just felt like it for some reason. I didn't have any like reasoning for it. It was just like, I like to do that in movies like this, and I think it was like a lottery. I ended up being right.
Yeah.
But I thought they did really good because they allude to other people so many more times in the movie.
Yeah.
And they do that thing of like double covering their bases to make you think it's not her boyfriend, to make you think it's not Jack Quaid. But like, Yeah, I don't know. This movie just worked for me almost all the way across the board.
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought they were both really fun and really funny, and her kind of Matthew Lillard impression that she starts doing at the end a little bit was phenomenal.
It's so good.
It was great, and I think the thing about this movie coming out that I really think I realized, and I've seen so many people posting about this, his contribution to Scream as a character far surpasses almost any other character in the history of the franchise. When you go back and you watch the first Scream, he's so over the top, but he's so much fun.
He's so good.
You just want that character. It's honestly like, and spoilers obviously, but like they brought back Billy Loomis. Like Skeet's in this movie in these like weird dream flashbacks, and I was kind of like, wouldn't I rather this was just Matthew Lillard? Like, if you're going to bring someone back, it wouldn't have worked because, like, he obviously only works in the context that he worked, but, like, that's the character that I miss.
I think what's so interesting about it, too, is, like, the only reason that he ends up being the more famous of the two original killers, because they even talk about it, like, Billy Loomis and that other guy, right?
Yeah.
Don't they say that in this movie at one point? He's kind of always the second dude because I guess when you just look at Scream in general, like, he's the main, like, love interest. But I think also it's mainly because of Scream 2 and the fact that they like wrote out how important Billy's mom was and Billy's name is and the Loomis name in this franchise. Whereas like I think the combination of the two of them is probably how it should have actually been remembered because Lillard is way sweeter. But yeah, I don't know about bringing him back, but I think at the very end, like I guess tying it together that she's his daughter is kind of like. It's cool. You see her go kind of batshit crazy
kind of nuts,
at the end.
and that's one of the best moments, right? Is that they do set that up, and it does give you a little bit of a question mark of like, is she just going to end up being a killer at some point? Is that like an extra? It does set up nicely for that plot point, or Jenna, her sister, could be maybe the lead of the next movie if she ends up being crazy. Like they can go a lot of directions with that. So I know we both love this movie. I know we both were big fans of this movie, and we obviously at the end of the episode are going to get into a whole conversation of the best and the worst of the franchise. But as we do on this show, we introduce a thesis statement, something that we used to do on our old show, and it's kind of just our biggest idea. It's like the overarching theme that you realize after watching this film or after revisiting, the canon that we're talking about. And I think the one that we get to here is one that's referenced in the movie a lot. It's what the movie's kind of about. Yeah. It's about the requel. They go in and they describe the requel. It's like not even a thing really that I think was a popularized term for me until watching this. I knew what it was. I had heard people talk about it. I mean,
our thesis statement could literally be that Scream 2022 invented the word requel.
Yeah.
Like, it made it, like, canon. It made it, like, a popular term. But that's not what we decided on.
No, we went with Scream 2022 proves that the requel can only ever be second best in a franchise. At best. And look, I know we have some sort of backup for this to talk about this because the whole premise behind a requel, and they talk about it in the movie, is that you're taking legacy characters and plot lines very similar to the original film or trilogy in some cases. You're adding new blood to it, and you're not really doing a hard reboot. You're not getting rid of that old stuff. You're building on those ideas and weaving in the legacy characters to sort of kick off what will eventually be a new franchise, a new trilogy, a new thing. And in this case, obviously, it's called Scream, so it's supposed to be a start over.
Yeah.
But very famous ones, obviously, The Force Awakens, Halloween from 2018, Star Trek 09 is pretty spiritually similar to this. You bring Spock back, you get a new cast. Matrix Resurrections just tried this, Jessica Henwick and those new characters. You bring back the old ones. And all that ever happens
Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters. If it's totally successful and it hits on every level, which I think this movie did, all you can say is, that's the second best Scream movie. Because I don't know how I could possibly justify this movie being better than Scream when it's borrowing so much from Scream.
Well, I think what's really interesting about this thesis specifically is that, like, when you talk about movies being able to actually have a good requel, like, if the conversation is that this movie, Scream 5, could be better than Scream 1, then that means that you're still hinging on the fact that Scream 1 was that revolutionary, that it was that impactful. This entire list of movies, Force Awakens, Halloween, Candyman, Star Trek, Matrix, Ghostbusters, and Shaft, like, the original of all of those properties are legendary.
Yeah.
Like, they truly are. A New Hope, the original Halloween, like, there's no competing with it. So I think the idea that like a requel could be better than the first, it feels almost impossible because the only reason you're even getting to the opportunity of doing the requel, the only reason you're making a requel and not a sequel is because the first one is so good, I have to use parts of it, the parts of it that I still can, to recycle and not just make a sequel, not make a prequel, but like I need to reuse this because it doesn't get better than this, and then I need to try to make it different than what else has happened.
Yeah, I mean, I can think about certain movies where I'm like, okay, if they had made the new Mortal Kombat a requel instead of a full-on reboot,
Shang Tsung came back,
right? Like, you bring back the original people.
Over,
I don't know, because like it's very possible then that it could be good because the original Mortal Kombat
brought back the original Goro.
Yes. You're like, oh, you bring back all those characters. Like, what ends up happening there is maybe it is better because the original Mortal Kombat is totally sweet, but it's not like a great movie. And I do think that it's possible, but I just think that in general, what you're talking about is true. The requel works the more cachet that original has. And the more cachet that original has, the more that legacy fan base is going to really attach to the idea of those people coming back. I mean, I think I talked to you about this on the phone the other day, but like I remember watching Force Awakens and thinking, I mean, I'm excited to have these classic cast members back.
Right.
But they all feel kind of tired compared to the new cast members. Like, I really need these new cast members to drive this thing because like Harrison Ford looks like he wants to die. He looks like he wants to be killed, which was in fact the case. Like, you know,
he did. He was like, just get me in and get me out.
And so I think that it sets up for this new thing we have. And just like anything, there's going to be a whole bunch more of these, we know, over the next 10 years because that's how Hollywood works. And some of them aren't going to work. And eventually this formula is going to get tested. Does this actually work? Or does it only work when you're talking about franchises as phenomenal as these?
Yeah, and I'm curious if there are any requels out there that you guys would argue for them being better than the original. Because, like, you know, talking about these properties that we specifically have, I think the point that you were talking about the new cast kind of carrying it is really important because it's true. Like in Force Awakens, in the new Candyman, I was going to say in the new Matrix, but not the new Matrix, but in Star Trek, for instance, like in all of those, I do care exponentially more about the new characters that are brought in, but it's almost like the old characters are there to let you know, like, don't worry, this guy's cool. Like, this movie's good. Don't worry about it. Like, I'm here to make you guys feel safe, and then you go on with those new characters, with the new story and all that. So, with that all being said, I think we both love the new Scream. We obviously have to get into the new rankings here. I think that's a pretty solid thesis. I'm very curious to see like that term requel and how much it's going to be used over the next several months and just in general in future of film discussion, because it does feel like there are so many movies that are going to come out like that. What was your relationship to Scream growing up? Did you like it? Did you watch it?
I didn't see it when it first came out. I mean, I'd be surprised if you did. We were young. I mean, we were, you know, when
I didn't watch Scream till college.
Yeah, I watched it when I was older because the first Scream came out when we were both 8. It came out in 96. And so we both were at the age where this is something my dad would have let me probably watch,
right.
But we just didn't watch horror movies. As a kid, I just didn't have a lot of it in my life. So I probably watched the first Scream somewhere in like high school would be my guess. Mm-hmm. Like somewhere in the next 10 years, I watched it for the first time. And I also didn't understand what was so special then. I think I got it, but now talking about like being in the space that we are and talking about movie franchises so much, now I completely understand that if you were at the right age, like if you were in high school and Scream came out,
man,
it was a phenomenon. I mean, it was a complete game changer.
I mean, I think if you were just like an adult period, like when Scream came out, like I'm sure if I was my age right now and Scream came out kind of like the way that this one did, and I was just like, damn, that's a good movie. It's like pretty intense and really scary. The only thing is that this one wasn't doing anything too new other than kind of the comedy parts. But like, so yeah, for me growing up, Scream, basically what you said, I didn't watch it, when it came out. I was too young. It took me years later. I think I did finally watch it like, must have been maybe my freshman or sophomore year in college. My relationship with Scream growing up was Scary Movie.
Yes.
Like I watched Scary Movies religiously. I watched Scary Movie so many times. Like I love it. I still think that some of the best things of Scream are the ideas that they got for Scary Movie and vice versa. And like the way that like they continue to play off of each other as both franchises goes on. Obviously Scream does not play off Scary Movie, but yeah, that was really it for me. And I think a big part of it is like when this movie came out and you look at the people that are famous in it, not really any of them did anything while I was growing up other than, I guess, Courtney Cox doing Friends. But like even growing up, Neve Campbell and David Arquette, while that was still when they were the most famous, they didn't do a whole lot to like really grab your attention as like a young movie watcher. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, these are people that all are basically made most famous by their role in Scream, other than, as you said, Courtney Cox, who, you know, Friends is the real legacy. I think it's even funnier that for us,
Cougar Town.
For us, we actually were part of the movie generation that followed the success of Scream.
Yeah.
But we didn't, like, it wasn't clear to me that I Know What You Did Last Summer and Final Destination and these new, like, teen horror franchises that were coming out in the 2001, like, middle school, high school for me. It wasn't clear to me that these were actually riffing on something that was totally revolutionary and making fun of the genre, but
Right.
it had brought back the teen slasher genre. Like, to me, the teen slasher genre was just normal because, like, that's the age that I was, you know, I was going to movies with girls when I was 13 or 14, and, like, those were the movies that were coming out. So I think it's totally funny looking back that Scream is so much more impactful than I ever could have realized.
Yeah. I mean, you and I have had this conversation a lot about, like, this time in film and, like, what horror movies were and what horror movies were being watched. And it's like, I think people were pretty tired of what they'd been getting for a very, very long time. It felt like it was kind of just like the same thing being recycled all throughout, I think, the 90s period from what you got in the 80s and the late 70s. So I think what happened with, like, Scream and Blair Witch Project, and then just a couple years later, you know, or several years later, probably more appropriately speaking, with, like, Hostel, was like, it was like this started that ball rolling, and then there was, like, that next wave of, like, the Hostels and the Saws and all that crazy stuff that happened. This was really kind of revitalizing the genre, and it makes total sense because when you look back at the original Blair Witch and at Scream, they're both really phenomenal and both, like, very different than what we'd been getting.
And there was a small trend, obviously, of the ones coming from overseas. You had the remakes of The Ring, and you had remakes of, like, The Grudge and movies that we know had been popular, and that's sort of what we got. So you were talking a second ago, though, about the people that were involved and how, you know, it would have seemed like when we were at that age that all these people were going to have really significant careers. I mean, the time they all did, right? Courtney Cox is in the middle of Friends when she's making this movie. David Arquette is, you know, soon to be marrying Courtney Cox, and Eight-Legged Freaks is around this time. Nev Campbell's doing Party of Five, The Craft, like
Wild Things.
Wild Things.
We all talked about that movie.
We all did.
And we didn't know what it was about.
Don't you see Kevin Bacon's butt in that movie? I think that's what we all talked about. And, like, you look back at their careers. I mean, this is, you know, we were prepping the outline and we were like, okay, let's pull their most famous things they've done in the last 10 years so we can make reference to it. And I was like, I haven't heard of any of this. I was like, I've literally heard of one of these things.
I think the most surprising thing in all of it is that, like, I think Nev Campbell's, like, not bad.
No.
Like, I think she could have had a way better career, whereas, like, I don't think David Arquette is very good. As much as I really enjoy watching him, I just don't think he's super great. And even Courtney Cox, like, I think that Gail Winters and Monica are, like, kind of parts of who she is, you know, like a lot of who she is.
Do you think it's funny at all that she does Monica, the, like, well-behaved good girl sister, and then she gets punched in the face and she's like a bitch character, and then she goes on to play a whole bunch more characters like Gail Weathers as opposed to a whole bunch more characters like Monica? It's almost like Scream feels like it was the turning point.
Well, it was yeah, maybe a turning point of, like, actually calling her that and kind of making her somewhat of, like, an anti-hero, because Monica was always annoying.
Yeah,
I think everyone always knew Monica was annoying and kind of a pain in the ass, but it was, like, endearing. But I guess that's kind of where Gail worked towards, right? It's kind of an endearing pain in the ass by the end of it. Like, her and Sydney are good friends. Like, we're not upset seeing her in the newest Scream film. They give her a little bit of struggles in it, so she's, like, a little bit more human.
Yeah.
She doesn't have those bangs anymore.
Oh, the bangs.
There's, like, an interview of her, like, talking
about the bangs.
She, like, won't. She still does not, like. She hates them.
It's the Drew Barrymore show. She's on with David Arquette, and she's on with Nev Campbell, and she's like, you know, it was a bangs look that I had, and you were supposed to kind of pull the hair back to a certain point and then cut them. And she was like, but for some reason, somebody pulled my hair a little too far back. She's like, and they started up here instead of down here, and they're all just dying laughing. You can see David Arquette's getting so red, because I guess I read in, like, a different interview that she blamed him, and he took responsibility for suggesting the bangs.
Oh, really? Yeah. He's like, I love her enough to take this bullet. I will fall on this sword.
I mean, I think like when I was trying to come up with, like, what to say about the Scream films after watching them, I just kept coming back to, like, it's one of the most absurd looks I've ever seen in a movie. I don't know how that happens, and they don't say, like, Gail, you shouldn't do this.
We had a serious conversation about, like, how much her hair gets worse from 1 to 2 to 3.
Yeah.
It's like it actually just gets progressively and exponentially worse through the first 3 movies, and then they finally save it in the last,
they also all look so much older by the fourth movie. I guess that's what happens when you have adults playing high school kids.
Well, yeah, and 10 years when you're already in your 30s will do a lot to you.
No, I'm sorry, by the third movie. I meant 4 years later. I
Okay.
said that wrong. By the third movie, they all look so much older. In only 4 years.
Yeah.
I think it's probably because a lot of them are older playing high school. But I kind of was shocked by Scream 3. I was just like, wait, really?
Because they're all just in college then? Right? Or I guess they're actually out of college at that
they're
point.
they're movie people or
they're
whatever.
older.
Yeah.
All right, so guys, that's kind of the history on Scream, or really more so about our relationship with Scream, what we thought about the newest Scream, and of course, what the 3 stars are really doing now, which is honestly not a whole lot, unfortunately for them. But now it's time. Best and the worst. We're gonna get into it. We're gonna get into the rankings of these movies, what IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes kind of, where they put them, and then we're gonna get into us breaking down our categories to actually give you the true best and worst of Scream. So if you like what you're hearing, make sure you guys, take a screenshot of wherever you're listening, or send us a screenshot of your rankings of the Scream films 1 through 5. Tag us on Twitter. We love talking to you guys on there. We love keeping the conversation going at Andrew Ghai, at Ben Bateman Media, and we will, kind of continue that conversation with you guys. Maybe Scream 3 is your absolute favorite. Maybe it's Scream 2. Maybe you think the original Scream is overrated. I would love to hear all of your thoughts.
I want to hear all the hot takes, theories. Those are the ones that I definitely want to hear. So let's just talk about a little bit of where these things stand in terms of their rankings. The number one most mind-blowing thing to me is that the highest rated Scream film on Rotten Tomatoes at 81% by all critics is not Scream, but it's Scream 2.
Yeah, I just don't understand how essentially, if we're going to break this down, 2 more critics saw Scream 2 and thought it was, 2 more of them thought it was better than Scream. I just don't understand that. 79 and 81%, they're obviously very close, and because of the way the Rotten Tomatoes does it, it's just a thumbs up or a thumbs down. But how on earth did Scream 2 get more thumbs up than thumbs down of Scream 1? It doesn't compute.
I think for me, when I think about this, I sometimes think about going to see a movie, and I watch the movie and I come out of it and I have my initial thoughts on the movie. And if it's not a movie that I'm that excited about or I don't care that much about, I give my initial review and I have my thoughts and I move on. And I think for some people when Scream came out, it was so meta and hyper self-aware, and he had already done New Nightmare a couple years earlier, that they were like, you know what, it was clever, but it kind of missed for me. It was predictable, and thumbs down. And I think by the time Scream 2 came out, those same critics were like, oh, well, actually, this movie was genius, and I missed it on my first review. I'm going to give this a thumbs up because now I understand what I watched. And I think that because, Rotten Tomatoes is a thumbs up, thumbs down. Yeah. It's not about an actual rating. So, I think that that's probably how, is that they're just more, willing to accept it, but it still
makes no, that's so many mental gymnastics you had to do to try to, create this scenario around when the movie came out. It just feels something that just needs to be fixed. It's revisionist history. It's just so weird. But you know what? Okay, Scream 2 is better than Scream at 81%. Scream has 79%. After that, it's Scream 2022 at 75%. And then Scream 4 is at 61%. And Scream 3 at 41% on Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, I'm actually shocked that Scream 4 is 20% lower than Scream 2.
Well, yeah, and then
that's a massive drop off.
And on top of this, the highest rated Scream film on IMDb is the new one at 7.6. Yeah. The new Scream film is the highest rated, up against a 7.3 rating for the original. But I mean, a lot of people who are rating on IMDb right now are convinced that the new Scream movie is the one that is the best.
I think definitely moving forward, I will probably go back and watch the newest Scream movie more than the original. But that's also because I've had decades to watch the original, and I've used those decades to watch the original. Yeah. I've seen it so many times, and I think because Scream 4 is, so much of what we're talking about in the beginning is of that requel idea and what they recycle and kind of their new take on meta, since it just is more of this generation and more of this time. I could see that, but I don't know. I'm really surprised by these ratings, but that's honestly why we don't use them. We just kind of use them as a guide to starting this conversation.
Yeah, as sort of a barometer of this is if somebody was going to say, what's the best Scream film? They're going to look it up and go, oh, I guess Scream 2 is the one I have to watch. I'd better go start with that one because that's really the best. And so anyway, we've come up with a number of different categories. As you guys know, week to week and show to show. Sometimes we'll change these up to match the franchise. This franchise has a lot of killing. It has a lot of death. And so the first category that we're going to talk about is the best death. And we're going to do it for every single movie. This was a really fun conversation for us to have have, because obviously it was great for us to be able to watch a handful of these movies together. And also, I know for reference, just so anybody watching this knows, we also went and rewatched New Nightmare and also Scary Movie 1.
Yep.
Just to kind of have a little bit of the stuff surrounding the conversation. I even, for the first time, watched Nightmare on Elm Street.
The original.
I watched the original for the first time.
Yeah. Doesn't age super great.
Doesn't, no.
Yeah.
But New Nightmare's great. I really liked
New
it.
Nightmare is cool. And there's some stuff that Wes Craven does in that, like the whole crawling on the ceiling upside down and backwards while they're in the hospital is like pretty horrifying even now. And like, because of the way that they did it, back then it was much more practical. Like it still works. It translates. So getting into the best deaths, I think this is really important because, talking about why Scream 5 works so well at the top of the show, it was a big part of that was like really great brutalization, like while getting to the kills, but also the kills were super sweet. So let's start at the beginning. Let's work all the way towards this weekend, which is the original Scream, 1996. It's got to just be Drew Barrymore.
I think it is, and I honestly think that Drew Barrymore's kill in this movie is one of the only things in the entire franchise that is not it's not a joke. It's actually the scariest thing the whole franchise has to offer. It's a genuinely terrifying scene. Mm-hmm. I think it's one of the most brutal scenes. Apparently the original was supposed to be even more violent.
Really?
Yeah, there was supposed to be even more intestines and like more horrible stuff going on. You said this earlier, and I think it's so funny. They used to scream. They used to actually scream.
Have like blood curdling, like gut wrenching screams, and I feel like that's something that people like they really, really went for in the earlier films, where it was like this, like especially in the beginning of 3 when Cotton and his girlfriend died, right? Like her scream in that one is so good. I remember watching this whole entire franchise, and Ash watched a few of them with me, and other ones she was like working in the other room, and every now and then I'd hear her just be like, "That was a good scream." And I'd be like, yes, it was really good. But Drew Barrymore, she does it all. And you're right, it is completely terrifying. And it's also one of those things where you get, at the time, and I guess for me, it's more so like at the time that I watched it.
Yeah.
Drew Barrymore was definitely the most famous person that ever came out of these movies, right?
Sure.
That's how it felt watching it, even though a lot of people would argue about Courtney Cox and Friends at the time, 100%. But like when you watched it 15 years later, 20 years later, whatever, like Drew Barrymore's career in film ended up being way more substantial. So like for me, not knowing exactly what was going to happen, even though I kind of did because of Scary Movie, right? Still, it's like you get the biggest build person in your mind watching it now, and you just kill him. Like,
I know.
You don't know if she's actually going to get away. Like, it feels like she'd get away. It's a 90s horror movie, right?
That's the thing that I think people almost take for granted now, is that was not something that they got done ever, and it's like such a big deal. They only had her, Barrymore, only for 4 days, and I think she was actually maybe up to play Sydney originally in the first movie. And so, but she comes in and she steals the movie in a lot of ways. That scene is so good.
So good.
And God, when she gets stabbed and she's crawling and she can't make a sound and the parents walk in.
She's like trying to scream.
Oh, it's so good. And then the popcorn gets like this big on the stove.
It's all bubbling around.
We will be right back to talking Scream and, of course, Scary Movie in just a second. But I wanted to remind everybody here that if you happen to be a patron of what we do over at Action Industries, we talk about our patrons a lot, you actually have an opportunity to share your picks for the best and the worst. As you guys know, actors, actresses, directors, franchises, we go through the painstaking process of figuring out our picks for the best and the worst. But if you have your own picks, we encourage you to send them in to us. Everybody at the captain and the general level has this available to them. We're going to start sharing this on every single episode, starting with next week on the best and the worst of M. Night Shyamalan. You send in 60 seconds of audio recorded describing to us your picks for the best and the worst and why. We're going to share one or even maybe more than one starting on episodes beginning next week. So everybody at patreon.com/teamaction at the Captain and General's tier. If you want to get in on this, send us a message directly on Patreon or email us at actionindustriesbrand@gmail.com. That's actionindustriesbrand@gmail.com. If you have any questions about it, we'd love to share your thoughts. Who knows, maybe you'll even change our opinion. All right, let's get back to the episode. Thanks for listening to another episode of The Best and the Worst.
Yeah, it's tough. Like, I'm so glad I went back and watched all of these because it helped like put my mind on the right track of what's an actual Scream moment
and what's a
scary movie moment, which is perfect sequitur to getting into our second Scream film, Scream 2, obviously. The opening, I think, is both of our favorites, but mine is a horrible reason that it's a favorite. It's because, like, If you guys have seen Scary Movie and you know their kind of play on what happens in this scene to one of the Wayans brothers in the bathroom, it's not a knife that goes through his ear, and he's not listening to just the wall. I believe it's a glory hole in the bathroom, and I think you could probably piece together the rest. But when I watched Scream 2, it's all I could think of.
Yeah.
It's the only thing I could think of when Omar Epps gets the knife through the side of the head.
Yeah.
Which is, like, pretty cool, but also, like, that was one of my stupid, like, that's not real moments in movies where I'm like, how did he know where his head was through the thing?
And also, like, you have to really stab a knife pretty hard to go through a wall and into someone's head. I mean, not that I've done it.
But if there was a hole there already, Ben.
So my favorite part of that opening scene, though, and this also they also spoof this.
They also spoof it with Brenda.
Yeah, it's amazing. Is I love the Jada Pinkett death. And also, like, you know, obviously it's funny that the movie starts out and it's her and Omar Epps and they're poking fun at the cast and the original film. And so, like,
she's like, oh, hey, girl, I'm just at the movie theater right now. Oh, wait, no, that's Scary Movie. That's Scary Movie.
But yeah, like her getting stabbed and everybody like cheering with their like stab things, and she gets in front of the screen and she's like, like
it's so over the top.
That's what I like about it so much. But that's also one of the reasons that I think Scream 2 immediately misses for me. It's like it legitimately kind of feels like that scene is just Scary Movie. Now it's a like I will say that the opening scene in Scream 2 I think again is the best scene in the movie. I think it's because I think it's like, and that's a theme. They want the opener to be a really memorable scene. Mm-hmm. So I think they put a lot into that scene. Like I think for me, it's probably the part of the movie that's most memorable.
I feel like that's like kind of a goal of the Scream movies in general, right? And I think with 2, it's good enough. 3, I think, is like pretty bad, but I guess it helps because it's at least Cotton.
Yeah.
Right? But I do think that the opener, for a reason, right? It's supposed to be like incredibly memorable.
Yeah.
But I guess maybe Scary Movie just ruined this one for me. I just could not take the opener seriously. And also, like, her death is so over the top.
It's so ridiculous. And that's also like why I like it. So that's, I think, the best death. And moving on to our favorite Scream 3 death. This one for me was the hardest because I don't like a lot of the tone of Scream 3. And now PLD, producer of this show and Action Industries, actually shared with us, he's a huge Scream fan, that there was a lot of pushback for Scream 3 because of the fact that Columbine had happened shortly before it. Right. And so there was a lot of pushback on the violence, that they wanted to make a bloodless movie.
A bloodless Scream. How horrible that would have been.
So the tone of Scream... And it's even, honestly, this is one of the things about Scream 3 that I think is so funny. So in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, they're on set and they walk into the filming of a Scream movie. And then Jay and Silent Bob Strike, they're in Scream 3. Because obviously they must have been filming at the same studio at the same time. So they're like, oh, let's be in each other's movies. Uh-huh. And they're just like their appearance in the movie, so much about the movie, the tone of it is like goofier. So the kills don't feel brutal in the same way. Like,
yeah, I think for Scream 3, the best one is actually kind of like on a tertiary character.
Yeah.
But it's when Ghostface pulls like the straight up cartoon pull the rug out from underneath you, and the dude does like a full on flip.
Yeah.
Like you have to jump and flip but anyway, he does the full on flip, lands on his neck, and he's like, you think he's dead?
Yeah.
And then he gets thrown out the window.
Well, that's what's great about it.
Like pretty awesome.
Because there's definitely a sequence, there's definitely a version of that where he could have been dead and like somebody could have walked past him and
he would like all been gnarly.
And he's like,
that would have been
but
sweet.
Instead he gets thrown, so then he's on the ground by the pool and he's like the new Randy, I guess. They even make like a joke about that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the one. Like most of the rest of the kills in Scream 3 are just sort of, they're the problem with what the franchise became, I think, which is like they're very generic feeling.
Yeah, like the Emily Mortimer one, the Parker Posey one. They're all pretty just like, eh.
Like, and I think it's probably some of the stuff we were talking about, because I can imagine a version of the Parker Posey scene that's so much more brutal.
Yeah.
I can imagine a version of it where she gets like shot in the shoulder through the mirror, and then she's falling forward with like a knife sticking out of her, and she's like gushing.
Or like, what if he like stabbed her and like picked her up, so she just got shot? Because he was shooting at the top.
Yeah.
And like, you know, killers in movies know everything. So like, what if he like stabbed her and picked her up, and then she got shot by Dewey?
Yeah.
That would have been awesome.
Totally. Savage.
Sick.
So I think that probably the rug pull is
so sweet. Okay, so going on to Scream 4, this is when things get like, you know, a little bit more modern, brutal, but they still, a lot of the kills like didn't feel super I don't know, impactful. I think that honestly the best moment was when you get Emma Roberts kind of fight clubbing herself.
Oh, that's like my favorite part of this whole
It's
movie. Honestly.
gnarly.
She tears some of her hair out, which like when she does it, I'm like, ugh. And she like
she
takes the
picks up
guy's
his
hand,
like scratches, like ugh.
stabs herself. I mean, like she's
Oh, and the stab is sweet. She like runs into the wall. And she lets out a great scream in that moment too. I actually kind of love Emma Roberts.
Me too. And she's
great.
And there's actually good parts of 4. I think. That's not my favorite kill because it's obviously not a kill.
Right, yeah. It's just like the best violent moment.
I do like when Kirby is like, you're going to make the first move, and then the dude in the chair stabs her, and he's like, this is me making a move.
Oh,
I do like that moment. I think it's a good kill, but it's not the best kill.
I also had a huge crush on Hayden Panettiere like for so long.
I think we all did.
Yeah, okay.
Did you see I Love You, Beth Cooper in theaters?
I did not see it in theaters.
I saw it in theaters.
Damn it. God. Hayden, I love you. But the best kill is actually it's Anthony Anderson.
It's such a good kill.
It's like the knife, like 6 inches into the straight center of your forehead.
Dude, it comes out and like, so okay, this is my thought process as I'm watching it. I'm like, okay, knife went in your brain, bro. So like, I think you've probably got somewhere in the 5 to 10 seconds range before you like lose function and you're dead.
Right.
But he's like knife in forehead. He's like, there's blood in my eyes, and he's like looking for something to hold on to. They missed a moment. This is like I think what should have happened because I thought this was coming. He puts his hand on the door. I wish there had been so much blood that his hand had slipped off the door and he had smashed his head on the car.
Oh, that'd be good.
Because that's like, I thought it was about to happen, and it doesn't. So instead, though, he's got this fucking knife hole in his forehead. He's like, it's in his eyes. He's like, and he like falls forward. It's like a really good kill.
I wish that he would have done, like, I've seen them do it in other movies, and I think it's actually with, I mean, how many movies have I seen people get stabbed in the head with a knife? But apparently a couple. But I would have loved to see him do the, try to pull it out, even though it's already gone, because it's like brain damage, you're dying. But that was awesome. And it's Anthony Anderson.
For sure. I mean, Anthony Anderson, like, one of my favorites of all time.
Death and Departed better? Death and Scary Movie 4 better.
It's Scream 4?
Scream 4.
I do love his death in Departed, but his death in Scream is better.
It's so much better. All right, and then finally the newest Scream. What is the best kill in Scream? Well, I think if we had to only pick one, it's got to be Dewey.
I think so, and it makes sense that it's a meaningful death. He like, you know, and the way it sets up too, you know, he's gonna die there before he even,
because it alludes to things we've seen before, right? He shoots Ghostface. Finally, he just has a knife. Just shoot him. So Dewey shoots him. But then he goes away to the elevator with them, and he's like, I have to go back. You have to shoot him in the head. So you already, as a fan, first of all, you know that he didn't just kill Ghostface. Yeah. He's got to be wearing a vest because that was a big part of one of the other movies, right? I think it was 3. Is that where the vest was?
And 4, maybe? I mean, definitely 3, though.
And so you know it. So he goes back, and he wants to shoot him in the head. And shoot Ghostface. Why did I say it like that? He wants to shoot Ghostface in the head, but then, of course,
he lunges forward. He lunges forward, gets the knife in the stomach. Mm-hmm. There's a couple things about this kill that are especially savage.
So good.
He gets knife in the stomach, pulls knife up, which is always like when you get stabbed in a movie, that's always one of those things where I like feel the pain as it's happening.
Yeah, and it's usually, you're always dead. You're always dead when they start pulling the knife up.
Just getting stabbed in the stomach in a movie is like, as we just saw in Eternals, you're just like, turn to water, keep running. Like, it's just like no one cares about getting stabbed in the stomach. But if you get stabbed in the stomach and pulled up, it's like, oh, that is...
And then, like, while that's happening, you don't even realize that he's also been stabbed in the back.
Yeah.
And then he gets picked up by, like, both of the blades getting carried. Oh, it's so gnarly.
The kills in this movie were...
so gnarly.
The kills in this movie were like, kills. There was a bunch of them that were real.
And I think what I love, too, about the fact that not everyone dies in this movie that gets attacked is, like, you hear about those stories of people that get stabbed, like, 9 times and they live, you know, or whatever. You hear like knife attacks where it's like they stabbed, you know, the killer stabbed him 57 times or something crazy. So like when you see the twins that I think are almost a MacGuffin, I think for a moment you're supposed to think that the brother and sister are actually murderers, but they both get like messed up badly, and they both live. Right?
No, the dude
No,
dies.
he lives. He's in the ambulance at the end.
Oh, that's who
He's
she
sitting
waves
in
to.
the ambulance. Yeah, he somehow survives.
Oh,
I
interesting.
feel like there's no way after the way he gets like destroyed in the yard.
I was thinking about it while it was happening, and they waved, and I couldn't tell who it was, and then I got distracted, and I hadn't thought
You're
about
like,
it until
Dewey
this day.
made it.
Dewey, I did actually think for a second, because in 2, when Dewey survives, you're like, what? You're like, Dewey's alive?
Like, there's no way, dude. You've been bleeding out for like an hour. So the Dewey kill is awesome. But then also both of the Ghostface kills are great. So the girl,
The girl's so good.
the girl's is so hilarious because like she's getting her ass kicked by both Nev Campbell and Courtney Cox.
Yeah.
After I think she stabbed both of them or shot one and
Yeah,
stabbed
but
the other.
as we've seen, they're being
fine.
stabbed does not, doesn't phase you.
And then it like ends up that they kind of take control of the situation. I can't remember if they stab her or not, but I think they shoot at her, and then she also catches on fire.
Yeah.
Which is great. And then you think she's dead, but the reason hers is sweet is because she comes back after they do the thing where like they're never actually dead,
right,
and then
right,
she
right.
comes screaming, and her face is all like melted off, and
Yeah.
her eyes sticking out. That one's sweet, but the other one is way better.
Yeah, so it's like it's setting up the whole like, Barrera is like a psycho because she's got Billy Loomis in her and this whole thing, and she's just, first of all, she cuts the throat of her boyfriend, and they show
They show like the opening of
the throat opening and the blood oozing out.
I think the only movie that like competes with this in terms of throat slits is Eastern Promises.
Oh, that's gotta
because they like do the sawing and you see it like opening up both times, but like this is very similar where it's like a deep cut in the neck and you see it kind of like unfold.
the lawless throat cut is
The
pretty
lawless. Where he lives.
Yeah.
Where he lives.
good. Have you seen that movie more than once? Definitely.
Come on, man. Who are you talking to here? I've seen that movie like 3 or 4 times.
That's amazing. So like because the throat cut, but then she also just goes straight
Like,
psycho and
ham.
and she stabs him like 18 times.
And I think what they do a really good job of, because she sees the knife on the ground,
Yeah.
right, and picks it up. It's one of the only times in all of the Scream films where you see that knife and it feels heavy.
Yeah.
And it feels sharp, as opposed to like, I think in almost every other Scream movie when I watch it, it feels like a fake
like a silver prop knife.
silver prop knife.
Yeah.
Whereas this one felt like it was like a heavy, like you were like, that's why that knife has killed people for 30 years.
For sure. And I also think that like she goes crazy and she stabs him a lot, but there was multiple scenes in this movie where Ghostface stabbed somebody like 6 times. You had a lot more of like
Like
and like
gnarly
and every
stabs.
time that would happen, I would be like, oh my god, this is like so savage to watch. Because like Ghostface in the old movies is like, you're stabbed.
You're dead now.
You're dead now. And then like I'm gonna survive because you only stabbed me on the left side of my stomach once.
And then you just left.
Actually,
this is gnarly.
But I did think that both Gail and Sydney at the end of the movie are like sitting there with their stomachs bandaged, drinking coffee, and they're like, yeah, we're good, right?
Oh, that is okay. So that's perfect because we're gonna have a good segment here moving forward. That's gonna be it for I think Scream 5 because we didn't have one. So here we go. Moving on through, those are our best deaths. Let us know what you guys think about the best deaths. Were they actually, your favorites or not? Were there better ones that we missed? And also, just a moment ago, before this, when we were talking about kind of you guys shouting us out on Twitter, continuing that conversation, I did want to let you guys know that if we do end up talking about any of those tweets or any of the reviews that you guys could leave on next week's episode, that episode is going to be the best and the worst of M. Night Shyamalan.
Okay, there's a couple reasons I'm excited for this episode because it means, first of all, that I get to rewatch The Happening, which hasn't happened. I haven't watched it.
What do you mean?
Since I walked out of the theater, I've not gone back to rewatch it. I've never seen Lady in the Water, which I'm excited for.
Last Airbender, anyone?
Oh, yeah, there's going to be some real
Need an
contenders.
excuse for that.
Because it's been, as of next week, it will be 5 years since Split came out. It's a January release. It's one of the, trying to find a January anniversary movie is tough because
very tough.
Most of the time, movies that are released in January are flops, and so you only get surprise successes. Like Taken was a January release. Nobody thought that movie was going to be good. Obviously, Split is one that nobody knew was going to be good.
Yeah.
When you do get a good January movie, it's usually because it surprised people. And so Split 5 years ago ago kind of brought M. Shyamalan back. I mean, and so we're excited to talk about that next week. And then if you guys are fans of it, I know one of our close friends, Dan Merle, has the longest standing fan of The Happening in the world. I almost want to get like Dan on record for that movie.
Just get like a quick excerpt. Yeah, so guys, make sure that you are tuned in. Check out PTA last week. Of course, this episode on Scream, and then next week it will be M. Night Shyamalan. Very excited about that. Moving back into our conversation here about Scream, the next thing we wanted to talk about was the best Ghostface.
Yeah.
Right? We've always said a great action movie or a great movie, especially I think a great horror movie, you need a great villain if you really want the movie to be great. So Ghostface, one of the most iconic villains of all time. We had a conversation on our YouTube channel over on Action Industries this last Sunday about like, do we think it's better or worse that like Ghostface is always changing, as opposed to Michael, as opposed to Jason, as opposed to Freddy. So many of these, probably Leatherface, you kind of get attached to one entity being it, whereas Scream, it's always changing. So I think it's one of the few times, instead of being like, well, what was your favorite Michael Myers moment in the movies? This is actually just like, who was your favorite of the villains?
Yeah, you know, we had talked about this before the show, and I was leaning into what my pick was, but I'm going to audible right now, so we can have a split on this, because it's so close for me, but I do want to shout this out, because I think for me, and I think you agree with this.
But wait,
there's more. The go-to is the new one, because he's so brutal. But I actually think the original Ghostface is the best Ghostface, and that's what I just decided. I was thinking about this, and the reason is because I think I don't expect that Ghostface to be clumsy. I don't expect that Ghostface to be brutal. I don't have any idea when I'm watching that movie the first time if it's a high school kid, if it's a crazy psycho. There's something so much more ominous about the first Ghostface that feels like when it turns out to be her boyfriend and Stu, I think it's such a satisfying... The whole experience of Ghostface in the first Scream is so satisfying. Whereas like this Ghostface is definitely the most brutal, and that almost pushes it over the edge for me. Almost. But I think it's actually the first Ghostface.
Okay,
Where do you stand on it?
I'm okay with that. I mean, for me, it was a coin toss between the two.
Yeah.
I think the original is the original for a reason. The voice, the original voice, like hearing it for the first time is great. But I really liked the newest Ghostface. I liked the little bit of backstory and how they were all tied together, the Loomis being in there. But I really just, like, for me, it was the fact that it felt super scary again. Like, Ghostface felt really like someone I wouldn't... Whereas, like, in 2, 3, and 4, I was like, if Ghostface and I were in the same room, I would destroy that asshole. I would win against Ghostface. Whereas in 1 and 4, I did not feel... Or 1 and 5, excuse me.
Yeah.
I did not feel that way at all. So for me, I think the best Ghostface is from the newest one because they felt like a real horror movie villain.
Yeah,
like,
true.
Just gnarly... brutal, but I guess that's the same as the first one.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that these requels and these horror remakes in this day and age really lean into.
Might have just been the ankle stomp. I loved it so much.
So good.
Oh, and the trickery.
Yeah.
I like tricking Officer Judy into coming home to protect her son, and then he kills both of them.
Yeah.
Like, that is gnarly. Or they kill both of them, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. The Judy runs into the knife.
It's so smart because it's like, that's exactly what a mom would do.
Yeah, for sure.
I loved it.
Yeah, I think it's a split for me, but it's close as the best Ghostface. Now let's talk about, I talked about the satisfaction of the best reveal. You know, I do really think that the satisfaction of it being Matthew Lillard and Skeet in the first one is great, but there's definitely been some questionable reveals in this franchise. You know, I think... people have different I mean, where do you stand on this? I'm between two, I think.
So instead of doing best reveal, we're gonna do worst reveal.
Yeah, worst
reveal. I think it's a better conversation. And I think, oh man, it's so hard for me between 2 and 3.
Yeah, exactly.
Because 3, I actually think the worst reveal is the voice modulator at the beginning of the movie after Cotton dies. You're just like, what?
Yeah.
There's this technology that can replicate anyone's voice to anything that they say. I mean, if that happened in the newest Scream, it would make way more sense with deep fakes and all that going on.
Yeah.
There'd have to be like some science behind it, but like the voice box in that was such a joke, but
they have all our voices.
They don't have anything we'll ever say. But then in Scream 2, I'm just like, who cares?
Yeah,
who cares about Timothy Olyphant? Like, again, watching this retrospectively, you're like, oh, of course it's Timothy Olyphant.
Right.
He became pretty famous. But that's not at all what the situation was.
Because who's Who plays the mom? Is that Laurie Metcalf maybe?
I'll look it up.
Yeah, I don't really like know who that is offhand. I feel like maybe I heard that once. Like I would have just been happier if it was Cotton. Like just make it Cotton Weary because like I mean it would have been a bad reveal anyway.
Yeah,
if that's what it was.
He's kind of the MacGuffin the whole movie.
Yeah,
like you think it's gonna be him.
But like, first of all, she's not a character. Like, she's like, oh, I'm a reporter that Gale feuds with. You're like, oh,
or like is like obsessed with Gale, but
and you're like, all right, sweet. And then Oliphant, you're like, oh yeah, you're the one kid I forgot to keep thinking about because like I don't care about any of the characters in this movie.
Well, and also like when you look at this movie from like a story structure point of view, like if you're looking at it more as like a side, like as a baking recipe as opposed to like a cake that is already made, and you're looking at like all the pieces that come in. The only reason for Laurie Metcalf to be brought into this movie is to be the killer. Right? There's literally nothing that comes of anything else that she does other than like her and Gale having a feud, like you said. But that doesn't make any sense to be in the movie unless there's a deeper thing to it. So like her being Billy Loomis's mom, it just kind of sucked. I think that's probably the worst reveal in the whole thing.
Roman's also a bad reveal. It's just that, and I think almost the thing that makes it worse is the backstory behind it. Is
like, what is with
ludicrous.
that? Like, why did they go? And I'm just going to use this word because it's exactly what is going on. But like, why is there a whole piece of this that's about like a Hollywood back rape room that like Henriksen is like, that's just how it is.
Well, it's even worse too because this movie's produced by Harvey Weinstein. I mean, this is like that. There's a whole like
so many layers to it that make it so gross and grimy. And then you wonder like, were they taking a shot at Weinstein during this or not? But I don't really want to get into that conversation. But like, the whole backstory and him and like being her half brother and all that. It just by the end of it when he was describing it, I just felt kind of gross.
Yeah, it's definitely worse. I think overall, just because it's so ludicrous. But the second one is like, the problem with Scream 2 is that Scream 2 is so close to being good, and then and when it's not good and it misses, I'm like, that felt avoidable. There's a version of this, like there's a version of Scream 2 that could have actually been really good. Like there is. I know you could have written a story that would have had a more satisfying ending that would have worked for me.
And I also, I guess they do it in 1, 2, and in 4, but like the killing your partner moment, the two killers killing your partner moment, I think obviously in Scream, the original, it's fine. It's perfect, right? You never see it coming. You don't see that it's two of them. You don't see that it's him. But then in the second movie and in the fourth movie, I'm just like, come on. I don't know why.
Like, don't you see this coming, partner, that you're going to get killed by your partner?
It didn't work for me in either of them. Even though I understand like why they did it in both of them. It just didn't work. So yeah, I think those are our worst reveals, but I think also to kind of ride on this train because look, as great as Scream is, as all the things we've said we've loved about it and all the best moments, like you have to pick apart some of the dumbest things. So that's why we went from worst reveal to now in every single Scream film. And this is again one where you guys can get involved and let us know is the what were they thinking moment. It's not quite the same thing as like in Scary Movie when you see Carmen Electra run by a table with like a bat, a gun, a grenade, and a banana, and then like the life and death thing. But it's kind of that ilk, whether you're talking about the production as a whole or as something that happens in the movie.
Some of the choices. I mean, you go back to Scream 1, and obviously this is something that was talked about at the time because of Scream 2, but like Scream 1 does not have anybody but white people. And on top of that, I don't know if there's any color in the entire movie anywhere.
I'm trying to think if there's like a teacher or a secondary character or anything, but like I tabbed over to look at our producer PLD. I can see him racking his brain as well. There's not.
Well, and like
there's just not.
Do you think there's any like we obviously know I think the reason, I don't want to say the real reason because I don't know, but I'm assuming the reason this happened is this was like kind of the format of movie making, and like at that point,
the format of movie making for like almost a century.
It hadn't really started shifting at all in 1996. But I mean, like, can you explain it like, I don't know, it's like NorCal wine country. Like, is there like a
no? There's no way of explaining this at all other than like this is how movies were made in the 90s. This is just like what it was all about. Like, I think any other type of legitimization or conversation behind it just becomes this like.
Explaining
just not
it.
owning up to the fact that like back in the mid 90s, you just had a bunch of famous white people in movies.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure. And obviously, like, within a year, because the next movie comes out 1 year later.
And it's the first thing they open it on a black couple, and it's like they talk about it over and over, and like they really, really take note of it. So it's like, at least they were up on the times a little bit by being able to kind of like own up to their mistakes. So Scream 2, obviously, the biggest, the what were they thinking moment was not that there wasn't any color in it, but this is one about more of the writing of the actual story.
Yeah, I think this is one of those short-sighted types of deals where they didn't realize at the
This will be fun in the moment.
Well, because I also think that this is one of those things where franchise movie making has evolved a lot. But we're at a point now with franchise movie making where, like, you need to protect the things that work about your franchise.
And the things that your audience loves.
Yeah, if you don't protect those things and figure out a way to keep bringing them back, you are failing. And so Scream 2...
You're like, they should have killed Dewey and Gale, and they should have kept around Randy, man. That's how I feel.
Well, they find so many ways to continue to bring back Randy's presence. I mean, in 3, they bring him back in a literal, like, found footage video.
It's like, if you're watching this, I'm dead. But also, since I'm dead, I do know how the killer has evolved.
Yeah, I do know how to fix
things, right? The reason
right?
I'm here is to help you so that my death will not be in vain. That my life's work will help save some other poor soul from getting mutilated. If this killer does come back and he's for real, there are a few things that you gotta remember. Is this simply another sequel? Well, if it is, same rules apply. But here's the critical thing. If you find yourself dealing with an unexpected backstory and a preponderance of exposition, then the sequel rules do not apply, because you are not dealing with a sequel. You are dealing with the concluding chapter of a trilogy.
Or in the 5th movie, it's like, we're all related to Randy. He was our uncle. Here's a picture of him. We know all about Randy.
And then also, even at the end of the Scream 3 moment, doesn't he say, like, but again, if you're watching this, it's because I'm dead, or something like that? You shouldn't have killed Randy in Scream 2.
It's the absolute most what were you thinking moment in the second movie. Like, think about all the characters that are in that movie that you could have killed. Like, there are so... I mean, I'm seriously, like... Dewey and Gale. No, but... like, Randy is such an essential piece of the movie. Like, Cotton Weary should have been killed, not Randy.
Yeah. And, like, what if Jamie Kennedy... was in Scream 5, like a tinfoil hat, like crazy dude living out in a trailer next to David Arquette.
So excited.
Would have been amazing.
Except, like, people would have been so excited, except then, like, and granted, there is something to be said for the fact that you have new characters who fill that role, who explain the requel and kind of have that whole thing. So it does give them the place of Randy.
Yeah, but it's just not the same.
No, it's not. Definitely not.
So moving on to Scream 3, the what were you thinking moment, we referenced it before, man.
Well, I almost want to jump on this one again because it is the voice box.
It's the voice box. It's so absurd. Like, they don't even try to explain it ever. Not even one time. They're just like, it works.
It's basically like, here's a donut. This sprinkle does your voice. This sprinkle does your voice. This sprinkle does your voice.
Yeah, like, how do they even program it? How do they do any of that?
It's like, and I mean, there's a lot of stuff with, like, cloning phones and, like, voice modulation where you're just like, I'm not entirely sure. You guys are just, like, really jumping to this existing.
I mean, this is what, 2000? So it was like, just because things could happen, like, it was like movies just made them so.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, this is how you hack.
I think the voice box has to be the most absurd.
What was the other thing you were gonna say?
Gail's hair. That's like Gail's bangs are to me. Gail's
that's actually like definitely it. Her bangs. We gotta put a picture up on the screen. It's just the worst.
Gail's hair. That's like the ultimate. What were you thinking from this movie? Because like when she shows up, I like kind of looked around. I was like, is this like a thing? This must be like a thing. I looked it up and it definitely is. She's made fun of it. It's talked about a lot.
They're so bad.
Yeah, because it's like, as I said, it's like they start up here. They are not like normal bangs. They're like high forehead bangs.
Pumpkin pie haircutted freak.
They kind of look like John Travolta's bangs from The Fanatic. A little bit, you know.
It's like a cross of that, and then Jim Carrey from Dumb and Dumber. All right, so moving on to Scream 4. This one was actually a little tougher. They did a pretty good job of, I think, covering their bases in this. But there was a moment that I was watching, you pointed it out, and this was even one of the moments when Ash was watching, and she was just like, what is she doing?
The idiot publicist played by Alison Brie, who's like real selfish, so you know she's gonna die.
She's morally compromised the whole movie.
She's like in the parking lot, and she's dealing with the Scream Killer. There's a Scream Killer back. She's like, I'm gonna walk to my car alone in this dark parking lot. Good idea.
First of all, Like, why park in a dark parking? Like, if you're in, if people are getting murdered around you, park on the street.
She's like, I'm gonna get in my car now. Oh no, the car won't start. Uh-oh, like there's something wrong with my car. Oh, there's a scream killer with a knife
on my hood, showing the knife and showing the little wire that they took out of my car.
And like, is this the one where she keeps locking the car and the door keeps opening? It keeps getting opened by?
I think so.
Yeah.
I know that they do something like that obviously in Scream 5, but I think it is a recycled moment of like because I do know there's a door locking, unlocking moment. I think that's it.
Yeah, maybe it's not this one. All I know is that when she's in the car and Ghostface is like around somewhere with the knife, it takes her less than a minute of sitting there to be like, I'm going to get out of my car in these heels and walk across the parking lot to try to get away from Ghostface.
To the elevator or whatever.
And he's outside my car waiting for me.
Like he's clearly been outside. He was just on top of the hood of the car.
As opposed to like, I'm going to wait inside my car and just, if he opens the door somehow, then I'll go out the other door. Or like, I'll just honk my horn really loudly and hope someone comes to help me.
Wait for him to make any sort of move before. Yeah. I mean, and obviously it's a horror movie. You know she's going to die anyway. There's no way. But it was just like the setup behind it was that did feel like a scary movie moment.
It was like one of the laziest. It was one of the single laziest moments in the whole thing. I just thought it was so absurd. Yeah, I can't remember the opening door thing.
I know that is from something. Is that moment?
Well, because is there a character?
I think it's in 2.
Because is there a character who's opening and locking and unlocking doors, and then the back door opens of their car slowly, and they don't notice it, and then they get killed?
Yeah. I think that's what happens, and maybe that's in 2.
In 2,
yeah.
Because 2's got in terms of car moments that phenomenal moment. I actually think it's one of the best sequences, and it's kind of preposterous when the car crashes and the killer's knocked out. And they have to sneak in, go over him to get out the window.
Yeah,
it's like one of the better like tension building sequences. It's actually done very well.
It's definitely one of the best ones. So yeah, I can't remember the lock thing, but really more so, this is just about Alison Brie getting out of the car when she knows that the killer is literally in the garage with her. She doesn't make any attempts. Doesn't she have a phone?
Yeah.
Like
anything. No service, parking garage.
Yeah, probably. That makes sense. That's all. That's literally what would have happened if she pulled out her phone and just say no service. So, all right. And then moving on to the final Scream, the most recent one. Again, on these last 2, they do, I think, a much better job. But at the very end of Scream 5, I mean, the girl coming back to life, Mikey Madison coming back to life, is pretty preposterous.
Sick,
but it wasn't like, what were they thinking? I think that this was just kind of like a lazy moment of like getting towards the end of the movie and just being like, all right, we're done. One of them got shot in the stomach.
Yeah.
Like, straight up shot.
Yep.
And the other one got stabbed with a big-ass knife in the stomach. And they're just sitting in the back of a hospital.
First, they, like, fight and kill a killer.
Yes.
They just fight and are able to, like, move really well and easily and just kill someone. But then it ends with, like, thanks for the coffee, Sheriff. My stomach feels fine and dandy with this bandage over it.
She's like, you guys doing okay? And they're like, yeah. It's like, no! You've been shot! Like, you're just probably delusional because of all the blood you've lost. So that, for me, even with, like, in the theater, I was like, come on.
I mean, the sister is on a gurney coming out because she's been, like, hurt in the shoulder.
Yeah.
They've both been shot and stabbed in the stomach, and they're not even on a stretcher.
And they've been in all the other movies.
And they're 30 years older.
Yeah. Yeah, so those were our what were they thinking moments. I think it is pretty indicative of like what happened in the first 3 as opposed to what happened in the last 2. Like they really did try to find or ground themselves in reality, and it's a really tough thing to do with this franchise once again. And I think as we did in this conversation of the best and the worst, which is coming up right now, is like what makes a perfect Scream movie?
Yeah.
It's the balance of terror and comedy and being meta and keeping like there's all these things that I think really come into the equation of making a great scary movie or a great Scream movie, and pulling all of them off has only been done, I think, maybe twice, maybe 3 times. I don't know.
Maybe 3. Yeah, I think it's just like any horror franchise, I think now, where if you love the franchise, you'll find something to love about every movie. And I think that's what's great about horror as a franchise. It's probably the single thing that separates it from almost every franchise. Because most franchises don't go 5 to 10 to 15 entries.
No.
You know what I mean? And they don't make really bad entries and then keep going. Like a lot of franchises end after like the
bad one.
second movie, third movie. I mean, there's 2 Zorro movies and then Banderas didn't come back. There's like, you know what I mean? Like that happens a lot where there's a sequel, it doesn't do as well. We only got 1 Quigley Down Under. Yeah. Only 1.
Only got 1 MacGruber.
Yeah.
It's obscene. All right, so here we go. This is the best and the worst of Scream. We're going to rank all 5 for you guys. We usually do the top 3 and bottom 3, but there's only been 5. So starting here at the bottom, I think this is kind of unanimously decided as the absolute worst Scream movie. I wanted to argue for it to be in the 4 spot instead of the 5 because when I watched Scream 3, I found myself laughing a lot more than I did during Scream 2. Like having a better time than I did during Scream 2. But I think the reasons that I had a better time and the reasons that I were laughing were not what the producers, directors, and actors had intended for. I laughed at it because it was like laughably bad a lot of the time, and that I don't think is enough to put it above Scream 2. Like, if someone came to me and was like, well, why is Scream 3 better? Yeah. I was like, well, because it's dumber and I enjoyed it more. I don't know if that's exactly the point you want to make.
Yeah, I think it's the expectation feels very different between the two movies. And I think that Scream 3, you know, it comes out the same year as Scary Movie. And I think while Scary Movie is a direct spoof and parody, I think Scream 3 still is trying to be pretty funny. It still wants to have a lighter energy. And like, I would just rather watch Scary Movie over Scream 3 for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, but so that's an interesting point you make about expectation, because like, by the time Scream 3 happened, I didn't expect it to be good.
No.
But Scream 2, I definitely had high expectations for. Especially after looking at the ratings.
I think Scream 2, the reason that it has the place, and Scream 2 is our number 4. That's our next movie on the list. And I think the reason so many people have a fond memory of Scream 2 is that if they were of age while Scream was a phenomenon, they watched it, and they watched it in a theater. The second movie came out a year later. It's the only one that has a year and following year type of situation. When you have movies that have that kind of lineage, you know, when you have Back to the Future 2 and 3, when you have like the second and third Pirates of the Caribbean movies, it tends to be because people are totally willing to watch 2 movies back to back and treat them almost as one thing. It doesn't usually happen with an iconic movie and then another one the next year. So I think that because the first one was so highbrow and it revolutionized the genre, a lot of people just watch Scream 2 kind of feeling like they were just watching the second half of the first movie. Whereas if you go back and you watch them, they could not feel more different.
They feel so different. It's like incredible.
It's like they're trying to, and because I was thinking about this after watching Scream 2. It's like the movie opens with them saying, sequels are never as good. Here's all the reasons why.
Right.
Here's all the reasons sequels aren't as good. It's just going to do X, Y, and Z. And then it proceeds to do that. And you're like pretty much set up to be like, well, yeah, I mean, this movie isn't going to be very good.
And you wonder if even they just kind of changed the narrative going into it, if that would have helped, or maybe if they took themselves a little bit less seriously or more seriously. There's just something for me that really doesn't hit with Scream 2, but that is still not the worst. Scream 3 is number 5. Scream 2 is going to be number 4, which means that we only have 3 spots available, and I think this is not really a surprise either. I think the only thing that we might see different from a lot of lists out there is that Scream 2 might be a bit higher up.
I think so too.
But I do think that people love the original Scream 4 and the now Scream 5 like a lot.
Yeah.
It's really just about where they land between 1, 2, and 3.
4 is our next choice. Scream 4 is our 3rd spot, and I do think that Scream 4 is funny because I didn't see this movie in theaters in 2011. I was not interested in seeing a Scream movie in a theater, and I don't think the franchise had the kind of cachet at the time. I don't think there was interest in the franchise enough that Scream 4 felt like a big deal.
Maybe 11 years.
Yeah, and I think it didn't feel like a movie that mattered. I think it felt like a shameless sequel because remember, 2011, you had just gotten both Rob Zombie Halloweens in the latter part of the 2000s. You had Nightmare on Elm Street's reboot in 2010. Friday the 13th is around the same time. They were rebooting every franchise. So Scream getting a 4th installment was just like, all right, another Scream movie? Cool, I guess.
And there's no one really, like, you look at Roberts, Panettiere, Culkin was not, and then you talk about the 3 leads that we've been mentioning. It's like no one was really a star at the time. Like there's not really a star in this movie. Brody, Anderson, like none of them, right? Yeah. So then you look at...
We also weren't in the requel era, right? That's the difference. Right. The biggest difference is like that era that we're in 2011. You talk about the biggest franchises that we have right now in the world, the ones that matter the absolute most. MCU was hardly going. Like it was barely getting started in 2011. Star Wars hadn't even really rebooted yet. Like most of what we have now that we look forward to and treat as like, you know, event-driven cinema, Fast 5 came out in 2011. That franchise was considered kind of dead in 2011, right? It saved it.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, when you talk about the things that really worked in Scream 4, I thought Roberts did a good job. Yeah. I thought the entire cast actually did pretty good. Like, I didn't think anyone was, like, outstanding other than, like, the people that needed to be. I thought there were some good kills. I liked that they did like the change up a few times where it wasn't just like, I'm in your house and I'm going to kill you, but it's like, oh, we're killing your friend right now instead, who's across the street, and you can see that. And, you know, there was just things about it. It felt more fresh. You and I, when we were talking on the phone about it, we had just watched Scream 1, 2, and 3, I think, over the course of like 2 days. And then you're like, I don't know why, but Scream 4 feels more like a Scream movie than the other two did. Yeah. In regards to 2 and 3. And I agree. I don't know exactly why. Maybe it just felt like a fresher look or a more modern take on it, but I think Scream 4 is pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is. It doesn't feel as clever or inventive as our top two spots, but it definitely feels like it gets it right. But as much as Scream 4 felt like when I was watching, I was like, oh yeah, this feels more like the movie I want to watch than 2 or 3 did. Our next pick really actually feels the way that I thought 4 was making me feel.
Yes.
Right? 4 felt like that when I watched it. I was like, oh, this is a nice breath of fresh air after 2 and 3. And then the new Scream that we just watched, 2022 Scream, which is our number 2 pick, really did feel spiritually like a sequel, like a successor to that original Scream. It just does it all right.
It really does. I mean, there's we talked at the beginning of this episode, so we don't need to really harp on it anymore of all the things that we thought this movie did correctly, but like, when you want a Scream film, like, what are the things that you look for? It's like, well, Ghostface, obviously. I'm looking for these characters that I've fallen in love with. Like, Sidney has to be there. Gale and Dewey have to be there if they're alive. They're all here. They all do a good enough job. They're in the movie enough, but they really let the new cast shine. I think that the movie is funny. I think that it's smart. I think that it's brutal. I think all of those things that you need in a Scream film are there. And then also when you talk about, like, even the more like Easter eggy things, or the things that, you know, like the Red Right Hand song, like they use it early on and it's awesome. Right? It shows up in every single movie and it's always kind of like a badass Ghostface moment. But this one really felt like, for a second, you were like, Ghostface just killed someone, and like, yes, dude, here we are. It was like a fist pump moment almost. Scream 2022, I think the only reason it's not number 1 is because of what we talked about at the top of the show. Like, if you were paying close attention to our thesis.
Yeah, I don't think you can, as a requel, really do better than the original. I just don't know if you really can do it. I'm sure it's going to happen. You know, one of the conversations that I know we had before the show was talking about Spider-Man No Way Home and how it's not necessarily a technical requel because it's the third film in its own franchise. It's the sequel to its own sequel. It's just bringing in elements from an older movie. So it's similar, but it's not really the same thing. They haven't rebooted a franchise, right? They're continuing a trilogy that was already a contractually obligated movie. They're just adding to it. I think when you're going the traditional route, I think this is about as good as we get. And
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know any other requel out there that really holds a candle to it. I mean, I guess some of the other ones we had on that list were close. Like, I do really like Star Trek 09.
Yeah.
But yeah, Scream was like an incredible breath of fresh air. And also going and watching the other 4 in the week leading up to it, it really shines. It really shows you why it stands out amongst all the others, other than, of course, the OG. I mean, I think this is probably our least controversial, our least hot take, top 5, top best and worst ever.
Yeah.
I think this is pretty much by the numbers, it feels like. But, like, Scream just invented this thing. Yeah. It really did. Like, all of the best things about Scream 4 and Scream 2 and 3 and 2022, they all lean on how good the original was, how good that original phone call was, how good that reveal was of Loomis and the other guy, you know?
I do think it's funny that it feels like the entire genre peaks with the opening of the first movie and then goes downhill from that
until 5.
Yeah, well, I mean, I still think the opening of the first of Scream is still better than anything in the new movie. I just think it's such an iconic scene. It's one of the most iconic. Like, that's one of the, like, that scene is like, I you know, I don't know who you are, I will find you, I have a special set of skills. Like, it's that kind of iconic thing. You sort of can't really, it's really hard to beat that. You have to come up with something that is so just incredibly unique and iconic to do that. It's really hard to come up with things like that.
And I think, again, like, the things that are great about Scream, you talk about the Dewey kill, you talk about the Officer Judy kill, like, those moments, they all come from you kind of falling in love with them along the way. And, you know, maybe you're like Ben here and you don't like Gale and Dewey's relationship. It's over. It's over. There's no way for it to continue on. And I'm okay with actually we'll get into that next of like where does Scream go from here, but I'm okay with Sydney and Gale still being alive. I think it'd be cool to have them maybe in one more movie down the road.
Yeah, that sort of feels like the way that they've been doing it.
They gotta kill Sydney.
Yeah, I mean that's gonna be a big one when they do it.
That would be crazy.
Really huge.
Yeah. So those are our rankings, guys. Scream, the original, is number 1. Scream 2022 is our number 2 spot. Then it goes Scream 4, Scream 2, and Scream 3. Let us know what you guys think about those. Did we get those rankings right? Is there something in there that is just completely absurd to you? Is Scream 2 actually the best film like it is on Rotten Tomatoes? I don't really think so, but maybe you guys can convince us. So, like I was just saying, what's left for Scream? Do you buy or sell this property right now?
I buy. I like this movie enough that I would be comfortable seeing another Scream movie. I don't want this to be like a Halloween Kills, Halloween Ends situation where we get a new trilogy that all comes out in the span of 5 years. I don't need 2 more Scream movies between now and 2026. Like, that would be, I think, too much. And what we noticed is that when you watch Scream movies in succession, the kills do start to feel a little bit redundant. Yeah. The sequences start to feel redundant. Ghostface, the whole premise that the whole thing is surrounding, which is like, there's another idiot in a mask. It's an anniversary trying to kill Sydney.
Right.
Don't do dumb things and you won't die. We're all going to do dumb things and some of us are going to die. Like, that premise needs space and time to breathe. So, but I also know that it's Hollywood. And I would love to get one more sequel. I'd love it if we had another sequel in, 2 or 3 years. Like, if you give me another sequel and it's like, 2025, we get like Scream. It won't be called Scream 6 or Scream 2. It'll be called Scream something.
Yeah.
They'll come up with some name for
Ghostface. It'll be called Ghostface.
Scream Resurrections, anyone?
Ooh, Scream Requiem, anyone?
Scream Revolutions. Evolution.
I think I buy Scream. In a perfect world, Scream would just come out every 11 years.
Yeah.
It really would. And like, I guess in order for that to work with Scream 5 and moving on was like you would need a Scream 6 to come out in a couple few years that still had Gale and Sydney in it, and then still had like Jenna Ortega and still had
Melissa Barrera.
I guess
you just don't like her.
I just don't think she's great. I'm almost just happier if it just went on, if like skipped her and just went to Jenna Ortega. But like, there's one more movie in a couple years that had them, and then whatever equates to 11 years total after this original Scream 5. Like, I would love for this to just happen every 11 years, but Hollywood doesn't work that way. No. Audiences forget too much. But if every 11 years we just had a new Scream movie with like a new young cast, but you have to have that thing of nostalgia to hold on to, which is why you would need one more to come out before that movie so that you did feel a little bit more attached to Jenna or her sister or anyone else that I guess they could bring back. But I just don't think it's going to get... I think, honestly, this is as good as it ever gets for Scream. I think Scream 1 is the best. I think Scream 5 was, like, shockingly incredible. And I just don't imagine there will ever be another better Scream film.
Well, I guarantee we're going to have a chance to find out because there will be another Scream movie, and these will be actors that are involved. So, guys, that was another episode of The Best and the Worst. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you are watching this on YouTube, be sure to leave a comment below your rankings for Scream. If you're listening on audio and you haven't already hit that follow or subscribe button on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please do. It is absolutely the thing that you can do to keep this show going. We've got fun episodes coming up. You mentioned The Best and the Worst of M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah.
This is, I think this is episode 9, so that'll be our 10th episode, which is cool. There's a little bit of a catalog now to go back and check out if you've just found the show. And we intend to keep evolving the show. So
and another thing that we were talking about doing was with our Patreons, patreon.com/Team Action. We have a list of people here we're about to shout out, but you and I were kind of toying with the idea. We used to have people being able to call into our shows, but now in the age that we're in, everyone seems to be able to record at home. Everyone likes to do that anyway. I would love, moving forward, if we were able to have our patrons be a part of the show by recording something, maybe a 1-minute clip of them talking about the topic at hand that month. That week, excuse me. So it's not something we're going to start up right now, but it is something that we're going to want to do moving forward. So patreon.com/Team Action to check that out. Maybe you could be featured on one of these episodes talking about a topic that you particularly love. It'd be really cool to hear a couple people's thoughts on M. Night Shyamalan, because I'm sure they're probably a lot different than ours, or on Paul Thomas Anderson, because he is so close to our heart. So that's something that we're going to think about moving forward. So a big list of generals to shout out here. that are the biggest supporters on our Patreon. Callsign Kilmer, Quiz Show, Demon King, Public Enemy #1, Kaiju, ACP, Robin, Kamura, Moses, Galactus, Bartab, Party J, The Gray, 24601. Callsign hashtag Ladies Night, JFTV, Wonderland, Quinn, Brosnan, Desperado, Jerry, The Slap, The Rock, Entrapment, Stamos, Dante's Peak, Top Gun, and Gundam. Big time salute to all of you guys.
Big time salute. Sign up on Patreon if you want to get your solo calls.
All right, guys, we'll see you next week on the best and the worst of M. Night Shyamalan. Take care.